Inspired by the work of Edith Cowan, we set out in 1991 to transform lives through education and research, giving our students the tools they need to take on the world. We've come a long way in our 30 years, growing into a modern, vibrant university and accomplishing some pretty incredible things. We've earned a spot in the top 100 young universities worldwide, with our teaching quality consistently ranked among the best in Australia. Our campuses have world-class facilities for teaching and research, with great places to study and relax. And the Western Australian Academy of Performing Arts at ECU is one of the most celebrated performing arts academies in the world. We pride ourselves on our forward thinking, delivering up-to-date theory and skills to tackle the problems of tomorrow. And with the announcement of the new ECU City Campus, our future looks brighter than ever.
A more complex sound still is white noise.
Welcome everybody to yet another of the Rev Talks with filmmakers and industry luminaries, and Edith Cowan University is really privileged to be involved in presenting these talks at Rev 21 this year. I'm Keith Smith. I'm with Damian Spiccia from Edith Cowan University, and most importantly with Matthew Victor Pastor, whose film The Neon Across the Ocean is the subject of our chat today. That is a beautiful film. That is a must-see film. And Matthew, I wonder if you could give us a bit of an introduction to The Neon Across the Ocean. What's it all about?
So The Neon Across the Ocean is part one in my 2020 trilogy of pandemic-themed films, kind of about what's happening in the world right now, but a direct response also to my own personal anxieties and fears and emotions to everything that's been happening. It's told through or lensed through the eyes of a Filipino-Australian, a 17-year-old girl named Mandy, who is in her final years of high school and just going through life and trying to make sense of it all in the same way that all of us currently are trying to make sense of it all. Yeah, it's a brief intro, I guess, into The Neon Across the Ocean. Yeah.
And you've alluded to that as being part of, I guess, a wider body of work. And maybe you'd like to, say a bit more about that. But first up, what is it about filmmaking that really engages you? Why are you a filmmaker? And what do you enjoy about filmmaking?
Okay, so I've always been quite a visual person. I'm the kind of person that when I'm walking, just down the street, I'll get lightning bolts of images. It's always been like this since I was really young. And when I was younger, I didn't have an outlet to understand what this was. It would later become filmmaking for me. But filmmaking has always been something that I relate to and connect to. I've said it so many times before that there's this film that I saw when I was really young called All About Lily Shoo Shoo. I've said it in every interview, this young film about young, melancholy, depressing kind of story of these kids in Japan. How I related to it as a young boy in Australia watching this on SBS World Movies, I don't know, but I had dreams of that film and it kept coming back to me. And I think I've been chasing that feeling forever. But with the rise of digital technology and, after coming out of film school and realizing there were so many ways to make films, there's big budget films and there's independent cinema, I kind of figured out my path in this kind of little sandbox that I play in, which is very singular filmmaking. So
yeah. And you're such a busy filmmaker. You know, everything I read about you talks about how prolific you are, and like particularly for Australian feature filmmakers, you are so prolific. So I can imagine like when COVID struck, how did it feel to be just sat down, stuck?
Okay, so it's something it's still ongoing, because even in this lockdown that's happened just recently, it occurred to me that I haven't really lucky I have small light equipment to use to film with, but it's just something that it was really hard. It's hard with my mind and how I work. Lucky I have that, and lucky technology has advanced to the stage where I can still do this. But yeah, it's just so difficult. It was really difficult. I had a lot of projects that were on the go, and some of those dreams haven't fully been fulfilled. So I don't know, my reaction to it was to continue doing the two projects and then the third one that were kind of coming together. But yeah, I guess so, just a reaction, very reactionary. Yeah.
And Matthew, I see that on Neon, you are the writer, director, cinematographer, and editor. That's a whole lot of roles to kind of be performing. Let's start with scripting. How did the idea come to you for the Neon Across the Ocean? What was the process of writing that story, that script?
Yeah, so the Neon Across the Ocean started, technically it started in 2015 when I was getting shots in the Philippines, and I would return to the Philippines every year and be filming bits and bops here and there whenever I went back. And the film was always going to be about the other side of the coin, because when I film, these shots in the Philippines, I'm thinking about what goes through my mind is this is where my, the motherland. But I, as a Filipino Australian, have been raised in Australia, and just what would it be like if I was there? What would I be like as a person, like tracing those roots back to Philippines. But because I also have an obsession with, some of Wong Kar-wai's cinematographer, Chris Doyle, cinematography, obviously the neon is something that and I think a lot of us who love cinema relate to those images. So it's something I'd always kind of evoked in those images. So I guess you could say that's the origin of it. But I was writing little bits and pieces of it, but because I don't shoot formally or direct formally either, like it's almost like a puzzle. So we were actually, we'd had parts of it shot already as the pandemic was happening. Then the pandemic happened, and it was really, actually I had one more extra shoot to do in the Philippines in April, where we're going to go over, or May, I think it was. Can't remember now, but it was in that period of time, and our flights got cancelled, and that's when I went, okay, it's either I don't make this film or I do make this film, but what's this film now? So it became a bit of like writing is they say there's a version, a draft in the script, and then there's a version in post-production, which is also writing. This film, more than any film I've made, was really about working in all these ideas and turning it into what the film is now. But that's all reactionary, and that's the whole process of how that came about. So and then obviously while it's funny, while doing that, I also, because I have lots of projects happening at the same time, so I just started making the other one at the same time. It's just how I work. My brain is it's a ball of anxiety.
You mentioned there that you've got like an unconventional shooting and directing style. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
So where to start with that?
Well, how about directing? Like so Mandy Whaley
Riviera,
yeah, an incredible performance. Like so fascinating to watch the entire film. So much written on her face. How about working with her, particularly like you worked with her during COVID and before COVID?
Actually, I want to. I don't know if I should be saying this because I haven't really. I don't know if I said she's my cousin.
Okay.
So I work with friends, family.
Keeping it in the family.
And how much more personal can you get when you're making a film about tracing those?
And what a great communication you'd have with her as well as a cousin.
Oh yeah, and that's the other thing, because I mean, I guess there's the, every family event, you're always getting to interact and talk about where the family sits and how these themes that we're trying to explore, it's something that comes up in topic. And yeah, I guess that's the working kind of relationship that I have with people. It's a very close knit, and friends and family mostly in all my films. So it's I'm not sure which other films of mine you've seen, but yeah, that's just kind of how I work. And the performer, yeah, wonderful. I'm really proud. I think there was always a stillness I could sense in her, and I mean, it's hard to explain because I don't direct conventionally. It's almost like, because I'm the DP too, so I frame it, and if it works, it feels right. It's an instinctual thing, and if it feels right, it's usually going to work.
What about in approach to dialogue? Do you encourage them to improvise, feel what's in the moment?
No, there's a script, but a lot of the time it kind of veers away from that. Always scripted though. But also, what I like to do is roll past the script finishes, and that's where I get long stares. I like when characters, I kind of tell people to keep staring at each other, because I kind of enjoy those in between moments before action, before cut. So kind of a technique I've been using for a while. But I feel like I approach film like a bit like, I know it's narrative, well, everything's narrative, but it's almost a documentarian's approach to filmmaking.
Yeah.
Because that's how I see things. I see everything through a lens, it's yeah.
Shall we have a look at a couple of images of Mandy from the film, if I can make that happen? All right.
Oh yeah, that's so sad.
Yeah. But staring.
Yeah. It's funny because in real life, I think I'm a bit more animated, and the opposite of maybe the works, some of the works I make, but not all my films are this quiet. I will say that.
Right. And looking at the next part of the trilogy, it almost looks like the antithesis to this film in terms of tone, from what I see of it. A Pencil to the Jugular?
Yes, yeah. That's a different response, and I think that's because I guess I always like to deconstruct my own work.
Yeah.
It's that film actually has two modes. There's a trailer out which I might recut and do a bit of a longer one and take that one down, but it has two modes because that one's set between February and March, and literally filmed like in that period. So it's kind of you have like color, beautiful kind of Melbourne sun, like kind of sun in February, and set in suburban backyards with long grass, and it's quite lush. And then like in real life, March hits and it's like that, like black and white, literally. And the film goes between the two worlds, and there's like a 3-act structure, I guess, but told in timelines. So I actually, that's something that happens in Neon too, because I feel like my brain is always, or my identity is in two worlds at all times. So yeah, that's why it's set half in the Philippines or parts in the Philippines, and then Melbourne too. It's like cutting between two worlds consistently, because that's how I see things, or how my identity has been formed. So yeah.
And I think in Neon, Mandy's journey is one of evolution, and I guess in the end, some level of empowerment as she sort of finds herself as a person and develops confidence in starting a relationship towards the end. Is this, a traditional coming of age story for you?
Well, I mean, it's interesting because I always wondered about that, the way that the film evolves and leads to that moment. I always wondered if it was, I mean, so much is from her point of view, but also there's moments where reality is actually, I guess, disjointed, and it might actually be a daydream. And I intended that to be that way because we're always looking to the other side. Like I'll always ask, oh, what would it be like if my mum never came here and I was born and raised in the Philippines? But it's the same with longing for someone. You always wonder what it's like on the other end of that, or what would life be like without COVID? Like, could we just be moving forward through this without this current situation, or without these borders blocking us from being with loved ones? Or I think these are universal themes. It's about longing for me. And I don't know if the coming of age element is something that I have fully gotten over myself, because I think I'm still discovering things, and I tend to just discover that through film. So in a way, Mandy channels that anxiety. We're all kind of learning every day. Well, I mean, filmmakers are kind of forced to always be kind of, especially if you're writing like every day, like I do, like it's always a consistent reflection. But yeah, I think it's all our coming of age story, perhaps. I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's what also another thing that really impressed me about the film is your responsiveness to the moment. As a filmmaker, like working with what you have around you to tell such an engaging, story, or bring to mind these feelings, like incredible, like just the images of, the stark, desolate streets, rain-soaked streets, those things, like the just incredible response to the moment, I thought, of 2020. Let's bring some more stills up there, Keith, because you had a really.
Shall we see some visual moments then?
Yes. You had a really interesting one up there a second ago.
Okay. Let's look at this one.
Oh yeah, I love this.
Yeah, here we go. Yeah, there you go.
This is it's Tito and Mandy in the car, isn't it?
Oh yeah, Tito is like uncle in Tagalog. So yeah,
Right.
That's her uncle. But yeah, and that in the line, it's all expression. I mean, that's I really like that moment, actually.
Yeah, beautiful.
I don't often, but to think of this film, I wonder if it could be described as an essay in light. Matthew, I have a feeling that you're a bit obsessed with light and the textures and qualities of it.
Well, I mean, that's another thing, because a lot of people grew up with I think a lot of people of a generation older than me grew up maybe obsessed with a different type of a film before the 2000s. But my coming of age film for me is all about Lily Shushu, which was Shunji Aiwa. I literally shot that on like super digital, like the first, I think it was like those Panasonics or Sonys that came out at the time. But it's really sharp. If anyone's seen it, it's like light is in that film is captured through digital cinematography, to use the language of digital in a way that's poetic. And because of that, I think that's why I'm obsessed with certain tones, because that was my coming of age film. Whereas I think some people maybe more relate to 16 mil or 35. And I really do want to shoot a film on film one day, but it is very cost effective to also, or for me anyway, to use digital and try to find the best way to shoot this. But I'm not aiming to make everything look like film. I'm actually trying to create something with digital cinematography that is unlike things that you see maybe on Netflix or other places. I mean, it's got a formalism to it. It's still, I guess, filmic, but I'm not trying to make it soft. I want it to have an almost hyper real quality. So that's something I'm chasing. Yeah. And that's in the framing, the lensing, purposefully trying to shoot towards oceans and seas, or smearing the lens with lights coming through it. These are all things that I, I've been doing, because I've been shooting a lot. Like I just shoot, and I've been using the same line of Panasonic cameras since the GH2. I can even show you kind of earlier model.
There's a bit of product placement here. I love it.
It's an earlier model of the GH4.
Oh, lovely.
Yeah. This is an earlier model. I think the 5S is somewhere here. But
so, did you shoot the bulk of the film on this
well,
camera?
This is yeah. I mean, this was an earlier camera. I've got it's actually packed up over here. This is another one that I'm sitting on the floor. But yeah, I tend to, obviously with a bit more of a setup on it. This is bare bones, but I mean, it's amazing what you can kind of do with what we're given,
Yeah.
And everywhere I walk is like it's so funny how my mind thinks, but it's like everywhere's a set, everywhere could be a film location if the right light's there and if the right feelings are there. So I'm just gonna put this down.
Matthew, I think you have a magnificent eye, and one of the things that Damian and I both noticed in this film was the use of the frame within the frame. And we'll just flick up another still here.
Oh yeah, I love that.
And here's another one as well.
Yeah.
And then there's frames on the
Yeah. Frames in frames.
Yeah. But it's funny because we've just come off shooting a film this year about filmmakers. So I'm moving in. I'm almost like a I guess I don't know if you've seen Hong Sang-soo's films. Yeah, moving. Yeah. Like kind of something a bit like that about filmmakers in a post-COVID world, but still with my melancholy and my style. But yeah, it's interesting. When I was framing that, I was shooting everything through glass reflections, but it seems to me like after seeing my images and contextualized with you showing them back to me, I was always doing that. I guess that's yeah, I thought I was doing that on the new one, and that was maybe something, maybe it's yeah, I've always been doing it, I guess. Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, frames within frames. I think that's an image I like.
Definitely part of your style. And one of the other things which stands out, I think, in the imagery of this film are the prevalence of shots that have paintings in them. We're often seeing a painting in the foreground or the background of a shot. And I just wondered what your intent was there.
Well, I really like this one because, I mean, the poetry in this is that whatever's on the outside is it's contextualized just through like almost like what looks like a window on the wall, because it's plain, it's like just a white wall and there's nothing else. But we've been reduced to just this kind of I mean, that's the most coming of age frame I think I could have thought of at the time, because it's how it does feel to be kind of isolated in your own way with a world beyond what you can't reach.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And lights. Oh yeah, lights. Yeah, that was.
Yeah.
It's actually a lot. Like it's like I went. My mum gave me a whole bunch of paintings that we had around the house. Put them up. Like yeah, so that's basically the mum's a production designer too. So, yeah.
That's
but no,
a very
yeah.
handy connection.
Yeah. And it's like how I think Scorsese's mum used to do the catering on the films.
Big Italian vats of pasta.
Yes, yeah. That's I guess we're learning from the best with Scorsese's mum helping.
But it must make the set a much more comfortable place to have people that you care about, family and friends, helping you and supporting you.
Yeah, but I mean, it's like but so much of it that it's nice to have that, but then so much of this is so internal for me. Like, I mean, now I've been especially like getting street shots and all that, that's like singular, that's just me, and in those moments it's almost meditative for me because of my ADHD. I really need something to concentrate on.
Mm-hmm.
And I have swinging wild kind of moods, and I mean, it's really hard to contain that. But
that's so fascinating because the film, it's got such a calm, contemplative pace. You could say, I'm sure it's been put into the slow cinema kind of bracket. And obviously, I can see an inspiration there of slow cinema and all that evokes. And it's interesting. I always find it interesting that in this like rushy, packed world of information and lights at our fingertips, everything, that the rise of slow cinema. And I was thinking about it when I watched your film, how it's almost like a salve of an oasis of calm in a mad world.
That madness is something that I've been sucked into. Like I find myself scrolling the feed, and I think
doom scrolling, I think they call it.
Sorry,
doom scrolling.
I'm when you're in that and you can't stop, it's so destructive. I feel like it's almost a destructive thing. It doesn't really help me create. If anything, it fills me with anxiety. But film is the one pure thing that I have, and I think that not only is this film a reaction to that, but I actually have started editing all 3 films into a 5.5-hour version.
Wow.
Which is, it's slightly different. So like Neon, Pencil to the Jugular, and plans that they've made, and seeing it, and this will take more months and maybe a year more to work on, because I've got to make all the sound mix a bit different to kind of match the tones.
Mhm.
If this film does play in that context, it will be the ultimate reaction to the fast-paced fast food world we live in, that I'm a part of, and part of that as a consumer. And you know, I think this is my kind of way of staying pure as a creative, because this film, and then a 5-hour version of the film, it's like you know, there's got to be more than just people looking up to influences, and even myself looking up to that world and being like, oh, everyone's so pretty and beautiful, and everyone's positive and happy. And I know it's all part of this illusion, and cinema brings it down to the real. You know, what are we really dealing with? You know, what's here, and you know, what are our hearts going through? It sounded a bit sappy. Yeah.
I think it's very true, very true.
Yeah.
You know, cinema reflects our world back to ourselves, and, you know, stimulates thought and contemplation. And I think, as Damian said, the experience of watching the neon across the ocean is contemplative. In those silences when the characters are thinking, are reflecting, you're doing that too. You're just going to that space. And that makes it a very different viewing experience. Gerald is not a particularly likable character in the neon across the ocean. And I think in the moments when we see him, you know, in the bar in Manila, asleep on the couch, covered in blood as he staggers back to the apartment, it's very hard to make any kind of connection with him, but still Mandy has some sort of connection with him in the film.
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out how to answer this without giving away too much about.
Oh, well, don't answer it then.
People in my life that I am actually, that I have a love. I wouldn't say love hate, but you know, I have complicated relationships with. But yeah, it's these are complicated things, and I mean, yeah, I don't know how to really answer that one, but. I think there is something really depressing about a character that is, I mean, there's literally a scene where he goes, oh, I want to dye my hair blonde like the old days, as if he's trying to live. And I think that I mean, regardless of whether he's not framed to be the most likable character, I think there's quite a lot of empathy for the way that the world ages, and the way that he, I guess, makes sense of the world too, because he's also trapped in his own private isolation, which is his head, his thoughts, his memories, his aging, his regardless of whether he may have used to go to the Philippines back in the day to, you know, maybe because he felt like more like a person when he was in a different position of power, maybe, or whatever those things are now not part of the world anymore for him. And when he is covered in blood and staggering to his apartment, I'm sure that he might, for a moment, reflect on that, perhaps. Then, how did he come together? Yeah.
Mandy's uncle Tito is, I guess, by opposition, a very grounded person. You know, I see him as very sage, a bit of a mentor, and his delivery in the scenes is very interesting. And I just wonder what instruction you gave to him as a director in those scenes.
I mean, Alfred Nick Dow is, I think he's one of the first Filipino-Australian actors that's been on mainstream TV. I'm not sure if he is the first, but he's been around since the 70s, I think. But yeah, he's been on like Tomorrow When the War Began, Neighbours. Like, he's been in a lot of shows. So he's actually someone I work with a lot, but he's also someone that I mean, I was on the phone to him just early this morning. Directing Alfred's a very interesting one, because he'll see someone I always work with, because he challenges me. And I just always remember being challenged and then it working. So that's a relationship I have with I guess I would call him Tito Alf myself. He would, he's wonderful. His eyes. And he's been through a lot. He without giving too much away about his own life, as a Filipino mentor and diasporic Filipino who has lived through a time in history and who has raised a daughter. I don't know if you know Charlotte Nickdow, but she's in a lot of great shows. She's one of the leads in Mythic Quest on Apple TV. That's his daughter.
Wow.
And in a way, maybe that's why he could deliver those lines, because he actually has a child that's pursued their dreams and has become, blossomed into a star, So that encouragement goes a long way. And maybe I wrote that partly for him just so there could be that, because that's, maybe I answered that then. I was just going in lots of different thoughts. I think I answered that. Working with Alf is it's organic, like everything organic. Yeah.
And they have a great chemistry together as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This for me is one of the great lines in the film, really, when he tells her how important it is that she realizes how special she is. It's a beautiful moment that you've captured there.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting with that, because I don't even know if I really had that growing up. I think there was some support, but I think when you think quite out of the box as a creative, and we're not talking like when you go, oh, I want to be a filmmaker, and you're like, oh, great, you'll get a job at SBS and you'll be doing, like when you, like me, like I want to make art films, there's support, and then there's like, okay, we kind of get what he's doing, kind of like, I never really had that support, people saying, like, when I was younger, like, oh, this is really special what you do. So I think that's just to reaffirm to myself that through Mandy, I guess, or through a mentor figure in the film, that that would have been nice. But I think the next generation has a bit more of that, which is really interesting.
Well, of course, you as a mentor to the next generation of particularly Asian Australian filmmakers, I was reading about, is just so inspiring and incredible. And it's so great that you're there for, as Keith and I are educators. So it's so wonderful to see a filmmaker really stepping up for the next generation like that.
Yeah. Well, because I didn't see that for myself when I was younger. And I think there are like quite a lot of good filmmakers in Australia of different backgrounds, making work. But I guess my work is a little bit more in the world cinema kind of vibe. It's a bit different to some of the other filmmakers. So I kind of take that, and run with that fully, because my influences might be, I guess, in that kind of way. But in that small kind of space, I think, it's good. And I also, like, I go back to VCA sometimes and see some of the young kids and chat with them, and they actually inspire me. I don't know if I inspire them, but they definitely inspire me too, because it's like, these kids have so many ideas that I wouldn't have even got. I think, I guess maybe they've got more information, but it took me a lot longer to kind of come to a voice. But some of them are just so sure of themselves, like straight out the box, right out the gates, knowing what they want, out of film school at like 20 years old type thing. So it's quite interesting.
Well, as we sort of come down to the last few minutes of our conversation.
Oh yeah, there's a ticking timer at the top.
A ticking timer, that's right.
Oh, there's so much to talk about with the film, like, with its themes, there's so much in there. Keith, where should we go? Where should we go in our final few minutes?
That's a really difficult question, but I think we do have to ask a question about the cats in the film. Damian's a great cat lover.
Okay.
Well, I love the symbolism of the cats and the dichotomy between a stray cats and a domesticated cat. Whose cat was that, the domesticated one?
So that's Barbara Chung. She's a childhood friend of mine. I actually have known her since primary school.
Right.
I still work with people that I've known like my whole life. And that's Olive. And Yeah, it's interesting you bring that up though, because I just saw Wendy and Lucy.
Yeah, the Kelly Reichardt film. Yeah.
Yeah, because it's on Movie now, and I then watched a video that Lucy has been in all of her films. Oh,
Right.
up until Passing, which she dedicated one of the films to the her dog. But yeah, I mean that's interesting because Barbara's thrilled that the cat's in the film. But yeah, there's a parallel I think between that, because the stray cats of the Philippines and Australia, like they're worlds apart, and that's what the film's really about. These parallels, these two sides of a coin, two worlds, borders, seas that separate us, or in my case, living within the same mind with two things. Like these, they symbolize the same thing, and that's why I think it's very fitting that the film ends on that image. I think I don't know if you remember, like, but the cat looks directly.
Absolutely.
I don't know if I'm doing spoiler alerts here, but yeah, it looks directly at the lens, and that's like the
It was a really striking image, and of course we see the strays at the beginning of the film as well, and it really bookends the experience.
Yeah, so that's how it's bookended by the visual metaphor, of the cats. I think it's something that, I think that gives it a nice rounded ending.
Yeah. Oh, here we go. Yeah.
Sorry, is this still recording now?
No, yes, we are. We're on the
It is. I think as we're now in the last few moments, we had a little bit of a chat off screen before we started. And one thing which you mentioned, Matthew, which I think is really, really important, is the importance of seeing this film on the big screen. A kind of experience which, as you said, is very different to looking at it on the small screen.
Sorry.
and I think in the few seconds that we have left now, I think it's probably important to say viva the experience of cinema on the big screen. And thank you so much, Matthew, for speaking with us today. And please, all you film lovers out there, go and see The Neon Across the Ocean. Damian and I enjoyed it very much. It's a beautiful film. Please see it and take it all in. Thank you so much, Matthew, for being with us today.
Thank you very much. See ya.
Yeah.